because we are going to have to get a lot of chat going, because today is all about connection. So make sure we can connect at least via the chat, other than maybe we even might bring you online later on. So make sure you put something in the chat. Now, I mentioned earlier on that there was a bit of a song going there, which was called Amazing by Seal. And it really is amazing, is it not, that we are here, and we are only here courtesy of the two people that you see up there in your screen, that is, say, Nathan and Peter from Collins Hume. So Peter and Nathan, on behalf of all of us, thank you for making this possible. And is there anything else you'd like to say just before we get underway, other than you're looking forward to it and all that kind of stuff?
Very much looking forward to it, Paul. I've had a brief preview of the content and
Yes.
excited about what we'll take away. So very much looking forward to it. Thanks.
Super good, Nathan. And hopefully those joining us will get to know some more about Nathan later on as well. What about you, Peter?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Paul. I've done plenty of events with you guys, and they're always exciting. So it's great to have you back, and hopefully the people that are joining us today will get plenty out of this afternoon. And there's more to come, hopefully.
I hope so as well. Now, up on your Zoom link, you should see some people walking down a beach. Can you see that on the side of the side of Zoom right there? Can you see that? No?
No.
You can't. Oh, okay. Don't worry. In that case, don't worry. We'll get to the people walking on a beach later on. All righty. So wherever you are, once again, thank you so much for joining me. It is really, really thrilling to have you here. And again, thanks for the guys at Collins Hume. And I would imagine, given where you all are from, well, actually, it doesn't matter where you're from, that many of you, if not all of you, are already clients of Collins Hume. Now, if you're not, today is going to be a good reason to go, you know what? These guys do exciting things, and I would really like to add that excitement to the business that I run. So make sure that you're ready for that. We'll talk more about that as we get on to our time together today. Now, let's talk about that time together today. Here we go. And Peter and Nathan, if you wanted to, you could turn off your cameras right now. It doesn't matter, but you could if you wanted to, okay? So what we are on today, there we go. Thank you. What we are on today. Oh, now I see that video a little bit differently than I saw it before. Interesting. Anyway, hopefully you can adjust that little triangular thing or that line on your Zoom window so that you don't see too much of that little background right there. Okay, so we are on a journey of discovery today. We really are. And that's one of the reasons why, and we were talking just now, by the way, about the Olympics, were we not? And if you were listening, you would have heard us talk about those. And the Olympics are kind of interesting when we talk about a journey of discovery. You'll see why that is in just a moment. But first of all, let me make sure that you are prepared. This is not just a, hey, let's get to know each other. This is, let's do some stuff that really makes a significant difference to your business. And so there are three things that you're going to need in order to do that. And for some reason, there we go. Here are the three things. First of all, you'll need a notebook and a pen. You will also need a phone. Now, whatever you do, don't get on the phone, okay? Just make sure it's alongside you. Don't use it for checking emails and all of those kind of things, right? But you are going to need it a little later on. And of course, as we've been telling you, those of you who've been here for a while, and those of you who I haven't said hello to yet, hello, Beck, you're actually the first one to register. So great to see you here. Make sure that you do use the chat. I am going to be encouraging you, like you wouldn't believe, to get on the chat, okay? Because that's how we connect. And today is all about connection. So let's make sure that you do that. I said that we were talking about the Olympics earlier on, and that's one of the reasons why I thought when we think about the journey that we're on, why French philosopher Marcel Proust would be kind of interesting in terms of what he had to say way back in the early 90s. And by the way, the work that he's done is still really, really valid today too. He said, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes. And I'm really glad he didn't say, but in having a different perspective. I'm really glad he didn't say that. What he said was in having new eyes. And you and I are going to get a whole host of new eyes today as we learn to look at things in a very different way, right? And we'll talk about what that means as we go through. In fact, let's just talk about what that means right now. The reason that we need to have new eyes, and it's not just looking outward, it's also looking inward, is to have a look at what's possible for us. What is possible in these really interesting times that we're in right now? There's never been a time like this, has there? The speed of change is incredible. And by the way, if you really get that the speed of change is incredible, you'll also realize that today it's never been as slow as today, because tomorrow it's going to be faster. So we want to see what's possible for you. And whenever I think of that, the word that pops into my head is potential. And one of the things that we want to do today is unlock that potential in your business. And whenever I think of potential, I think of this lady, a very memorable name, Tamsin Woolley Barker. Now, unless you live in Silicon Valley, you probably don't know too much about Tamsin. She is now the #1 change maker kind of person that all of the Silicon Valley tech companies use. And part of the reason for that was she was in not a very good situation about 3 or 4 years ago with some family issues. And she decided to write a blog. The name of the blog was Teaming. That's also the name of her book. Now, don't go rushing out and getting the book. It is all about how superorganisms work to build infinite wealth in a finite world, and how you can as well. Now, the how you can as well is just little bits down the bottom of each page. But when she published that blog, which was all about, for example, termites, how do they do things? What's the management structure? How do they build those great hives of theirs, or great things, piles of them? And how do they figure out who does this? Who looks after the air conditioning? How do they do that? And when she wrote that in the blog, one company who doesn't have zillions of people but has close to it is Google. And they looked her up, they connected with her, and as a result, all of those things she's learned about nature and how nature does things are now in place in Google. The way that she said this, she was interviewed about a year ago by Steve, excuse me. I'm trying to think who it was, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And she said this, she said, "Nature does not solve for problems. Nature always looks for potential." Now, I want you to think about that for a minute, because, it's very easy to be able to look at things and say, oh, there's this problem, there's that problem, it needs solving. But when we approach it with what's the potential in that, we get a totally different answer. Think also of how you hire people. Typically, when you hire people, it's like, tell me what you've done in the past and all of that kind of stuff. Why don't we, when we hire people, say, tell us about your potential to unlock great things in yourself and what you see as your potential in our company. So potential is a really, really important concept. In fact, what I want you to do now, I do hope you've got your implements with you, because you're going to need them. You're going to need a piece of paper and you're going to need a pen. You may even need a calculator, which is hopefully on your phone. But let's look quickly at this whole thing around potential. And you'll see that just for the sake of now, we're going to get into this a little more, that we've selected two kind of extremes here in relation to businesses. One is standard and one is stand out. I think it's fairly obvious what those two things mean, and we are going to delve into those in just a minute. But what I want you to think about is, for example, your customers. Just think about them for a minute and ask yourself, how would they rate you on that scale? Now, let me give you a few words around the scale. Like, for example, they might say, seriously, as in seriously, it was that bad? Or would they say, well, it's okay? Or would they say, oh my God, that's extraordinary, that's amazing, never experienced anything like that before? Think about that for your customers. And I've said here, pop it in the chat, but you don't have to pop it in the chat. You can just write it down. What would you say it is for your customers? 1 through 10. How would they rate you? And then how would your team rate you? We can talk a lot about team today. How would they rate you in terms of the experience that they're having with you? Where would they be? Just put a number, 1 through 10. And what about you? When you look at what's going on in your business, where do you feel that it is relative to where it could be? Now, make sure you write all those numbers down. And I was saying put them in the chat, but some because we're Australians and we tend to be, or you are anyway, humble, and we're probably not going to say we're a 10, we're a 10, we're a 10, right? So just make sure you've got those numbers written down, because I want you to do some mathematics on those things. Okay, do the math now. So I want you to find a total. What was the number of the customers you said? What was the number of the team? What was the number that you got? And let's call that number a T. So for the sake of discussion, let's just make sure everybody was a 7. Your customers were a 7, team was a 7, you were a 7. Then the total would be 21. Then what I want you to do is to divide that by 3, so you get an average. So not surprisingly, the average is 7, and then you take that from 10. So you get a number, which is, if you like, the gap. Now, what I want you to do, very, very important, hi Beck, what I want you to do is, please do this. Please put that gap number in the chat. What is it for you? And by the way, it could be a 0, right? But what is that number? Pop it in, just because we don't know how you develop the number. So go ahead. What is that number? A 2, says Chris. Good number, Chris. A very, very good number. The gap is a 2, 3.7. Oh, Nathan, there's an accountant for you. But then again, when you divide by 3, right, it does do interesting things, right? So put those numbers in. The Peter says a 2. Come on, pop the number in. Oh, look at this coming up now. Ren says a 4. Interesting. Barry says a 6. Thank you, Barry. Previously known as Fred, but that's a private thing. Okay. Leotimo, that's some interesting numbers. 1.7, all of those things as well. Brad, don't worry, it's all up there. You just find a number, which is your customers. What would they say was 1 through 10 on the scale? What would your team say? 1 through 10. What would you say? 1 through 10. You add those numbers together, you divide by 3, and you take them away from 10. That's where all of these numbers are coming from. So, Brad, I hope that was a good formula. The math class starts later, by the way, if you want to do that one. Well done, Sonia. Good numbers. Okay. Now, here's the biggest question. Yes, Brad, thank you. Here's the biggest question. Now that you've got that number, the biggest question is this. Now, I do want to make sure you get hold of this. What would be the impact? Don't worry about what you need to do it for now, but what would be the impact of you closing that gap? Right? What would it be? Would you feel joyful? What would it be in terms of dollars? What would it be? Oh, okay, Sonia, I get that. Yeah, but it still works for you, right? You just do for 1. So what would be the impact of closing that gap? Now, again, if you want to, you can put that in the chat, or alternatively, you can keep that to yourself. But I really want you to understand this difference between where you are and this potential as to where we can be. Now, with that in mind, thank you, Shane. I got that one. That's a lovely one. Fulfillment, more freedom, less stress, Alex. Yes, exactly right. Exactly. And those are good aims for our time together today. Now, you may remember we use those 2 bookends of standard to stand out. They're going to become very, very, very important as we move our way through this. So you'll notice I'm a fan of alliteration. That is, words that begin, or phrases that begin with the same 2 words, and they become, so the move is like this, from standard to stand out, because you stand for. Okay? Now, the piece that I want you to underline, no, I know I'm not on the screen, don't worry, I will be soon. Thank you, Ren. So where was I? Oh, yes, the piece that I want you to underline is the piece that you see in the top right. The piece that says something bigger than yourself. Today is about doing things that are bigger than yourself. Now, why would you want to do that? Answer, so that you become more attractive. And that's one of the secrets of becoming what we call a business for good. Remember now, this is all about transforming your business for good. Now, when you do that, there's something else that goes on. And something else where we want to move you to, and that is to become an impact-driven business, not just a purpose-driven business, but an impact-driven business. Now, why would we want you to do that? Well, there's at least 4 reasons that I can think of. So let's jot those down for a minute. Here we go. Here they come. So it is really, really cool to be impact-driven because it's measurable. You can actually measure it. It's not about words. We do good things. It's actually about measuring the impact, as you'll see. Not only that, it's really cool if that impact is trackable. If you can say, well, over there, this is what happened over there. And what's really interesting is it's inspirational. You'll see that in just a moment. For example, and when I say this, I'm not trying to knock anything, but I'm just trying to give you what tends to typically happen. You know, we gave $20 to some charity somewhere, which is really wonderful, but how much more powerful would it be when you say, every time you join me on Zoom, 5 kids get access to game-changing education? So when you do these things, it becomes very, very inspirational. And by the way, it happens just for cents, as you'll see. And it becomes very, very, very connecting so that we become businesses for good. Now, hopefully, Ren, in a moment, you will see me on the screen, but don't worry about the fact that you can't for now. So here are 3 key things that we need. Please make a note of the 3 things that we need to make this happen. The first one is story. The second one is connection, where we're going to spend a lot of our time together today in this connection piece. And also, we want to spend a little bit of time in the imagination piece as well. So these are 3 things that we're going to take a look at. Now, Ren, you can put a Y there if you see me on the screen. Hopefully, you see the Y there right now. All right, at least hopefully you see me on the screen. There you go. Okay. So thanks, Ren. Let's have a look at the power of story. And to look at the power of story, I want to introduce you to someone. Oh, by the way, what are stories all about? The best stories are those that inspire us because they connect on a human level. I want you to really understand this human level piece. On the left-hand side of your screen, some of you would know this guy. He is the guy that most people, me included, point to, who say he is the marketing guru in the world. Every day you should read his blogs. Every day they are just stunning. He says, marketing is no longer about the stuff. Now, I want you to really understand this. Marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but it's about the stories you tell. Let me make that a little easier for you. Marketing is no longer about the stuff you sell, but it's about the stories you tell. To put that another way, it's not about what you do. It's about the outcomes that you create for the people that you're privileged to serve. And the stories are all around those outcomes, plus some other things as well. So Seth Godin, you may not have known, but this guy you do. Sir Richard, have a look at what he said not that long ago. He said, business is all about creating connections. And what this word connections is going to be flipping in your brain through the rest of the day, I think, after we finish. Because only through these connections, he said, can we imagine and achieve something extraordinary. Notice what he said. He didn't say something ordinary, right? It's something extraordinary, that whole standout piece, so that you move out of this sea of sameness where everyone else is. Something extraordinary. Now, we're going to build on that, and we're going to build on that by just asking you, just in your head for a minute, to imagine something. Doesn't matter what you imagine, except I'm going to suggest you imagine something. I'm going to suggest that you imagine this. Imagine if something good happened in your business, something great happened in our world. Just imagine that for a minute. You had a great meeting, something great happened in the world. You did a great presentation, boom, you got an order, something great happened in the world. Just imagine that for the minute in your head. And I'm going to show you a video later on which shows you that whole thing happening. So stay tuned. So let's get back to Branson again. Remember, business is about creating connections, and because only through these connections can we imagine and achieve something extraordinary. So let's look at this connect piece. Now, this is going to be a little bit complex in terms of creating notes, but hopefully you find a way through this, okay? So today is really about you connecting in brand new ways to achieve something extraordinary. That's why we're here. Now, the question is, with whom do we need to connect? Well, I want to suggest to you there are at least 4 different sorts of people we might want to connect with to achieve something extraordinary. First of all, prospects. That is, the people who are not yet your customers, but whom you wish to be your customers. Next one is, not surprisingly, customers. We need to connect with them in a different way. I'll give you some more stuff on this in just a moment. So we're just identifying the people now. Prospects, customers, team members. We are going to look into team members in a really interesting way in just a second. And then the fourth one is you. So these are the 4 groups of people that we need to connect with. Now let's see why we need to do that and do that differently. So when we think of prospects, what we need to do, bearing in mind that we talked about the sea of sameness, where everybody's the same. Question is, how do you connect with them? So straight away they get, oh my God, this is different. This is standout. The answer to that question is because you stand for something, by the way, but more about that later on. What about your customers? Well, they've come to you because they saw you as standout. And now, particularly now, there's never been a time when we've needed this more than now. This need that they have to belong to you, where, you know, it's just a good place to be. And you need to build those places, whether you're in e-commerce, which some of us are, or whether you're in consulting, doesn't matter. We need to do this belonging piece. What about with team members? Well, you'll see a number there, 36%. Now, by the way, let's just do a little survey. Put a Y in the chat if you happen to use ChatGPT. Would you do that? Just a Y. Let's see how good you are with your ChatGPTs, right? Lots of people, well done, well done, well done, well done. By the way, if you don't have a Y in there, you should. You really should. And the reason I mentioned ChatGPT is because of this image. I asked it to produce an image of 100 people in a boat. And you'll see that image around about right now. Now, why have we got 100 people in a boat rowing towards the bottom left-hand corner? Well, you remember that number 36%? That's the latest number from a company you've probably heard of called Gallup. And they do a lot of surveys about team members, about people at work, and so on and so forth. And the number that they found most recently was this. If you think of 100 people in your company, I know there's not maybe 100, but that just helps us with the percentages, right? And you draw a couple of lines down there, then here's the surprising news. Only 36% of people are rowing hard the right way. Only 36. And by the way, those of you who are sole traders, this also works, as you'll see in a moment. Now, let me also just say something else. If this is where your team are, you cannot possibly be doing the standout things for your clients. You just can't. You need to think more about our teams than perhaps about our clients in some ways. Now, let's go through the rest of the stats because they're interesting. 36% rowing the right way. Oars dangling in the water, just 52%. Now, what does that look like? That looks like turning up at 9, going home at 5, taking an hour lunch break. You know what that looks like, okay? Now, if you add up those numbers, and the accountant amongst us have already done that, then you get left with 12. Have a guess what they're doing. They are rowing the wrong way. Okay. And by the way, have a guess. These are the people that are bitching and moaning and complaining and so on. And have a guess who their audience is. Their audience is the 52%. What we used to think is that people will aspire to the highest performer. That's actually not what happens. People will regress to the lower standard. That's now a study that started out 10 years ago and happens every day. So bear in mind this 36%. Now the question is, what do you do? Now maybe it's better in your thing, right, than 36%. But what do you do? Answer: you engage them, and you engage them in particular ways that we're going to explore in maybe a couple of minutes from now. So stay tuned for that. So engagement is crucial. And then what about you? Well, what we want to do is to do things so that you absolutely love. If your business is stressful, I hope you've got it figured out that you probably are doing the wrong thing, right? It's designed for you to have some joy. So we need to do things where that becomes the norm rather than, oh, look at that, someone's really enjoying it, okay? So let's see how that works. So what we're going to do is put all these things now in a sort of a different arrangement, and we're going to move them closer together. Because what we're doing today does exactly that, even though you can't see what we're going to be doing yet, but it actually does that. So we're connecting in brand new ways to achieve something extraordinary. You remember we are standard to stand out because you stand for something bigger than yourself. Here it is. And you make a significant impact in our world at the very same time. I'll let that sink in. You connect in brand new ways, and to achieve something extraordinary, you make a significant impact in our world, meaning on your community, in the world, whatever, at the very same time. And you do that through B1G1, which Collins Hume are a part of. Indeed, some of you on this call are already a part of B1G1. And I would hope, and certainly the guys at Collins Hume would hope as well, that you become a part of it. We'll show you more about that later on. So let's go deeper on this. And this is where I want you to grab your phones. Make sure you've got your phone. Okay, I'll just give you a couple of seconds just to get your phone, because I did tell you earlier on that you need your phone. So grab your phone. And of course, you've already figured out, haven't you, that if Paul is asking me to get my phone out, that probably means he's going to get us to scan a QR code. Absolutely correct. That's exactly what's going to happen. So there's the QR code. And you can see if you are watching this on your phone, then it's a bit hard to, scan it and all that kind of stuff. So you'll see there's a link, and Ren may be able to put that in the chat for you, just if it makes it easier for you. So bit.ly B1G1 in caps, and then DIFF on the end of it. So when you do that, let me just change my screen for 1 second here. When you do that, something interesting will happen. You will see something like that on your screen. The difference is that you will see it in a vertical way. Now, I know that some of you have already done this because we gave you this option when you were actually joining us yesterday. So what I want you to do right now is just put a Y in the chat if you can see that and you can see it on your phone. Don't do anything with it, but just pop a Y in the chat. Very simple, to let me know that you've got that. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Shane. Good to have you here, by the way. Thank you, Sonia. Ren, that's okay. You don't need that one. Just use that B1G1 link that I put in the chat before, or on the screen, bit.ly/B1G1diff. Scylla, thank you. Good to have you here, by the way, Scylla. And Beck, okay. So that's a fair few of us. I'm not sure why the others aren't putting it in the chat, because you're going to miss out. Okay. So now have a look in the chat, and you should be, as I said, seeing that. But let's have a look. Before you do what it says, I just want you to have a look at what it says. It says, thank you so much for being here. It says, part of the B1G1 magic is to be able to integrate impact at the very core of what you do. And since web events are at the core of what we do, this is one of those. So what we want you to do right now is go ahead and choose a project that resonates with you. Is it going to be, and we're going to make it happen, by the way, not you. We're going to make it happen. You're going to tell us what you want to make happen. Now, you'll see on here, some people did jump on earlier in the last couple of days and already have done some. So you can see the impacts that already have been made in the percentage, but don't worry about those. So you're going to do 45 days of access to clean water. Are you going to protect the orangutans from the people who keep knocking down the trees for the palm oil? Or are you going to do 5 days of education in the world? Which one? Thank you, Ren. Which one is it going to be? Just choose one where it says choose this impact. You hit it, and then you say proceed. And hopefully it then says this is all happening, and so on and so forth. So whatever it was you chose is happening right now. So the first thing I want to do is to say thank you. Just by being here, we made an impact. The second thing I want you to do, which is probably more important than the first thing in some ways, is you can see it down there in the chat. Let me know which one it was. Water. Now I can see that if I just move off the screen for a second, but was it water? Was it orangutan? Now you might want to say 1, 2, 3, whatever it was. Let me know that in the chat. What one did you choose? Was it water, orangutans? Was it a 2? Thank you, Peter. Oh, you guys are good spellers. That's great. Thank you, Beck. Well done. Water is good up there. Thank you, Alex. That's very good. Now, there should be more of you on there. I'm not sure where you've gone, but I know there's a lot of us here. Oh, maybe you already did it, right? Maybe you already did it, and therefore you're not doing it again. That's okay. I got that. Okay. Now, here's the most important question, though. Yes, we know which one you choose, and this is a difficult one. But let me know what that felt like. What did that feel like? Just I'm not going to go anywhere until you tell me what that felt like. Go ahead. What did it feel like when you did that? What was the feeling? You like, oh, that was nice, or oh, whatever, empowering, made me happy with myself. It was meaningful, says Nathan. Yes. Nostalgic, that's an interesting one. Alex, Chris, yeah, humble, exactly. Really nice, meaningful, felt great, says Brad. Yeah. One of those sorts of things. Now, what I want you to, those were, feelings that you had. Just imagine that you were able to do this with your clients. How would they feel? And importantly, how would you feel because they felt? Does that make sense? And all of a sudden you started to connect. Now, this is just one of the ways you can use B1G1. We'll get into many more in just a moment. But for now, thank you for that. Just put that experience at the back of your head and let's go deeper. Now, this lady, some of you may know, particularly if you read Forbes magazine, her name is Aviva Wittenberg Cox. And she happens to be one of the leaders at the Harvard Leadership Academy as well. And I saw this about 3 months ago in a writing that she did in Forbes. Now have a look at this thing. Just because remember, we are here to be extraordinary. Just remember that. So have a look at the first sentence. Great companies, she says, leverage their skills and know-how for the greater good. Read that again. Great companies leverage their skills and know-how for the greater good. What's that say? It's not about you. It's about something bigger than you, which creates the attraction. They broaden the definition, she says, of what the company's core products and services do, which is what we just did. And they create a much bigger purpose that is tangible. You can reach out and touch it, and it's visible to the customers you seek to serve. So I say again, what you just experienced, only one way of doing that. Excuse the offshore noise here as well. So that sentence makes sense, but let me translate it and put it in very simple words for you. Here's the translation. Every business needs a brand new story. Remember we talked about story? And we need that story now, because there's never been a time like this. But the question that's always interesting is, all of us get, oh, yes, I want to run a better business. All of us get, oh, yes, I want to make more impact. But the problem is how, right? No one shows us how, unless you're a client of Collins Hume, for example, and are doing all of the things that are leading up to you being able to do this, right? Rather than trying to go, oh, how do I do that? And because you don't know how, guess what? You never actually do it. So the how is critical. So let me uncover a how for you. And this how is B1G1. And what we're going to do is have a look at a very specific example of this. This particular example comes from Australia. It could be any number of thousands of examples, but it happens to be on the Sunshine Coast. Now, what I'm going to do is do something I never should do, which is go live. We have actually just gone through that click. We are now live on the internet. And we are at the site of a company, you can see it, called Changing Habits. Now, they joined B1G1 about a year ago. In fact, about a year and 2 weeks ago. And interestingly, 2 weeks ago, they were sold, and they were sold at a number that absolutely blew their mind. And you are about to see why that happened. Okay. So you'll notice here, they do, well, you can see what they do, right? And by the way, their coffee is amazing. But they have a tab, which is a tab that we all could have. In Collins Hume speak, it's called legacy, but in most everyone else's speak, it's called impact. So let me just click this and see where it leads. And sometimes when I click that, I don't know why it is. There we go. I was going to say I have to click twice, but I don't. So now what do we discover? We discover that this business is a business for good. Right? It's right there. They're using stuff that's there that all the B1G1 members can access in the media kit and all these kinds of stuff with lovely photograph and everything else. And then underneath, oh, by the way, lest you think that this is very challenging, I'll let you in on a secret. They don't mind me telling you this. Together, we built this page in 2 hours and 20 minutes on a Sunday morning. Okay? And the same thing could happen for you as well. Every time we do business with our customers, they say something special happens. Together we get to make a difference. Imagine you could say that. Just imagine that. And then they talk about this, making an impact, changing habits, we're on a mission to do all, and then we use B1G1 to do that. I love this line, don't you? I love this line. And you've only got to look at the news to see how much more of this we need, right? Creating a world that's full of kindness. And then they talk about how do they do it. And this is where you'll see some of the tools of B1G1, and you'll see some that we've already used, you saw anyway, us using. And this is when you shop with us. Ren, let me just change this thing around here. And so maybe you can see me as well now. Ren, you might want to pop a little Y in the chat to let me know that you can see me. I hope you can, okay? So there you go. So when you shop with us, it says we're creating important, inspiring impacts together. And you can see what they're doing. They're using that little tool. Now, they've got literally 30 or 40 of these, depending upon the order value. And then it says, after checkout, you choose one of the impact projects. And look at this. Remember we talked about how it was tracked and measured? That's live. That's live, not making that, not a video. That's live. That's their impacts as measured on the Sustainable Development Goals. Let's just scroll down some more. This gets really, really interesting down here, and I hope my internet is running fast today. It usually is here in Singapore. Remember we said you can track it? Well, that's exactly what's happening here. So and by the way, this is all done with one click, just one click. 20 nutritious meals were provided. Or over here, let me just wipe, there you go, coming up there. It's going to talk about something there. Sometimes this is slow. There we go. 94 days of training in sustainable farming phrase were given through B1G1 by Changing Habits. And you can go all over that. You can go to changinghabits.com.au and you can see this. But now let's keep going because it doesn't stop yet. Look at that. They're almost at 100,000 impacts. You're going to meet some people later today who are over 14 million impacts. But for now, 100,000 is pretty damn good. And you can see we're tracking their giving in real time. And then over here on the left-hand side, you see a really unique thing. B1G1 now links to some 6,200 apps. So it links to Google reviews, it links to Calendly, it links to Xero, it links, you name it, we link to it, which means it's so much easier than it ever was. And then when you scan over this, you get to see, oh, that's interesting. Yesterday, that was 602. So you get to see it. It's all happening automatically, right? Now, that is how we used to talk about these guys. And we used to say, wow, oh, by the way, they're nice enough to say some things about B1G1 as well. But we used to say, isn't that great? But now, since January, we say something different. And this is very important. This is where Peter and Nathan come in. We say this, just by doing what you saw on that page, the revenue from this particular site, listen very carefully, has increased by 6.1 times. I didn't say percent, I said times. I said to you that when they were sold, the amount they were sold for was mind-blowing for them. It was only because this had happened. Now, am I saying you're going to get a 6.1 times increase? No, I'm not. What I'm saying is you're going to get a hit, but this is just an example, okay, of what happens. And so, by the way, don't join us because you want the revenue hit. Talk to Collins Hume if you want that. Talk to us about how you celebrate that. So let's go back here and get into where we were. And I'm going to show you some examples of this. Now, Peter, I don't mean to, let me get rid of that to double me there for a minute. I don't mean to denigrate your profession. I really don't. But I'm going to talk for a moment about accountants, right? So let's talk about B1G1 for a minute. What it does, you can see there on your screen, and you've already seen some examples of this, that it lifts your impact, your engagement, and connection to a whole new level. Now, it means that every time you do business with us, meaning this is what you can say, you make sure something great happens in your world, as it were. And this is where it gets to accountants. I was in London not that long ago, and I met with this guy, an accountant, and he said, this is what he said, this one brilliantly simple idea literally transforms your business. And then here he is. His name is Graham Purvis from Leeds. And he is, you know, if he wanted, I mean, most accountants are conservative. There are exceptions, but these are not the words you expect to come from an accountant. Look at it. So we've added this sustainable impact and clear process. Those of you joining us in North America, process into our everyday business activities. And then this one, I love it. B1G1 allows us to fulfill our purpose to make a positive difference to people's lives. Thank you for giving our business a soul. Isn't that powerful? Now, let's see how this happens. Well, not surprisingly, you don't sort of stick it on. You integrate it into what you do, and we work hard with you to make that happen. So let me give you some things that people do, and you might choose to be able to say. You might say every time we send an email, for example, the kid gets access to game-changing education. Now, you might say, oh, that costs a lot. No, it doesn't. It's just sense in order to do this. And I know that sounds weird, but it's because of the way the members work together. This one, every time someone connects with you on LinkedIn, wouldn't it be nice to be able to say, we help a farmer run their beekeeping business for an entire month? What you're seeing on the right-hand side is a selection from 448 high-impact projects around the world. What about when you do a presentation? Wouldn't it be nice at the end of the presentation to say, by the way, thank you for being here. This is what happened as a result of you being here. Or what about when someone pays an invoice? Maybe let's make it really strange. Pay your invoice on time. That never happens, right? And that might be because you don't do this. You send them a little note that says, we say 50 square meters of forest to protect the orangutans. Or when your team members achieve something nice, you know, why don't we say a blind person, whatever it is you want to say. Or, and you don't have to do it like this. Imagine someone just bought something, or you just completed a project with someone, and then you sent them a B1G1 gratitude certificate, which of course we help you with. And you can read that. Just imagine someone getting this, right? Now, let me just direct your attention down to a couple of lines here. We've celebrated this special project, by giving 6 children in need access to bicycles to get to school, and provided solar lamps too, so that they can get their homework done. And again, we are talking about sense. We're thrilled to be serving you, but let's have a look at the bottom line. Our simple goal here is to keep on making great things happen in our world together with you. Remember, we talked about this whole idea of belonging. This is how you make that happen. Or you can, oh, by the way, pop a Y in the chat. If this is like new to you, pop a Y in the chat so that you can tell me the answer to that question. Let me know whether this seems to be kind of, how should I say, connecting. You can see it right there, connecting for you. Let me know in the chat, just for the Y or however you want to say it. Thanks, Brad. Scylla, thank you. Thank you, Ren. Glad you said that. So any other Ys in there? Let me know what you're feeling. It's very important. Okay. Some of you are sending it directly to me, which is nice. There you go, Shane. Well, I know you know, because Shane is already a B1G1 member and hopefully loving it as well. Leia Tamika, I hope I said that correctly. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So good. So good. Okay. Well, that means we're kind of on track. So let's see where we're going to go from here. Oh, this one you're going to love. Remember the thing that I got you to do earlier on? Well, this is kind of like a similar example of that, where the difference though here is that this is an app which accountants actually use, where they might do proposals. We would much prefer that you call them plans, but anyway. And then automatically, we're delighted you said yes. So glad you accepted our proposal. It means now that we can do this, then go ahead and choose, right? You can imagine the impact of that happening in our world. At least I hope you can. I hope you can. So this is just one example, but there are lots more. And everything here that you see is absolutely under your control. Now, this is the biggest question of the day. In the chat, would you please put, in fact, I'll put it up here for you. Put a Y in the chat if you would say yes to one or both of those. In other words, being able to do this, do you feel it would add soul to what you do? And obviously the implications of that are pretty high. Do you feel that adding this into your business, by the way, for less than a cup of coffee a day, right, would help you do all of this. Yes, okay, so that's good. Now, if you would like to explore this in more detail, there's two things you could do. You could just put EXP in the chat, and then we'll know that you'd like to explore it, and we'll talk with you about your application. But a simpler way of doing it, if you want a simpler way, is just use your phone again and just scan that QR code. And that QR code will get you talking with, when we will do the listening, by the way, not the talking, to one of our partnership team around the world. It could be me sometimes. I get the privilege of doing it as well. And it's just a little 20-minute chat, seriously, no more than 20 minutes, where we kind of have a look at where you are, where we are, and whether the two can mix. It is really a very, very sensible, thank you, Shane, a very big why, a very, very sensible thing to do. Now, with that in mind and looking at my watch, we are currently doing that, you'll be pleased to know, live because we're partnering, B1G1 partners with you. It doesn't stick on, it partners. We work together to make this happen. And we'd be very happy if you were the 1,232th. But let's have a look at what's happened. This was the number as of 9 o'clock this morning. I'm sure it's past it. And I shouldn't make light of this number. Look at it, 3,000, get it right in a minute, 356,706,921 impacts to date. And who's made that happen? People like Peter and Nathan and people like Shane and so on. And it's quite a story, because when you're part of B1G1, you're connecting with these people, right? And who created these impacts? Well, the people that are businesses for good in 48 countries around the world. And notice they were using all of these this is the magic of B1G1 on the right-hand side. All of these high impact projects. It's very, very tough for a project to become a B1G1 project, very tough. They have to apply, it takes 12 weeks, then it goes before the independent board, and that independent board rejects now. It's between 7 and 9 out of 10 every quarter. That means it's very tough, which means that every time you see a B1G1 project, it does what it says on the tin, right? And you'll see something else surprising here, right? 100% of your giving goes. What's the asterisk? The asterisk is there are people called credit card companies and banks who, when you do transfers and all that, take a little tiny piece of it. But aside from that little tiny piece, B1G1 makes nothing out of that whole transaction thing there. So, and we'll explain how that works a little more when we connect. So, by the way, I was at breakfast with someone just north of Ballina about 8 weeks ago, a very long-standing B1G1 member. And he said, Paul, can I tell you what B1G1 does? And I said, please. He said, and as he said, I knew something good. And I said, can I write it down? So he said, yeah, go for it. So he said, it gives us high impact connection. It gives us high impact culture. That's that whole thing around engaging your team. And it gives us high impact branding. And I stood back and said, oh my God, I'm so glad I was here for breakfast. Thank you very much. He said, I've got 2 more other things to tell you. And I said, okay, go for that. He said, it does it inexpensively and effortlessly. So again, if you want to talk with us about that, just hit that little QR code that you see. Now, the guys at Collins Hume do it absolutely magnificently. And I want to show you what I mean by magnificently. Now there you'll see 2 people hand in hand walking along a beach, which means they're enjoying their business, by the way. But have a look at the front of the Collins Hume website. Can you see what it says? You. And then it says that's all we focus on. And then it mentions this word legacy. And building a legacy. And then they have this whole piece on what that means, the legacy piece. And then as you scroll down, take a look at this number. This is why you want to connect with the guys at Collins Hume. All of the work they do locally, but look at that, 14 million impacts. And when you go to the site, you'll be able to go deeper and you'll see all the other things they are doing. on top of the incredible work that they do with businesses. So if there was one good thing that you wanted to do today, it would be talk to Collins Hume. Okay, it would be so good. Now, final thing for me, and I'll let Peter and Nathan have a little word on that in just a minute. But final thing for me for the day anyway is this word legacy. It's very, very, very important. And usually we realize it too late. So when we think about legacy, I like to think of what Steve Jobs said in 1996. He said, the storyteller, remember we said it's all about story, sets the vision, the values, and the agenda for an entire generation yet to come. Now, as you read that, read the last 7 words. For an entire generation yet to come. When you read that, you get, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about something bigger than you. Now, that's just what I want you to do is do this. Given that you've taken great notes and everything else, on that notepad, just finally, the final thing we're going to do is just draw a triangle. In fact, make the triangle a bit bigger, like that. And then you can put the word legacy in the middle of it. And when most people think about a legacy, we put an L word before it. The L word is leaving a legacy, okay? Now, we think that we have a choice about that. We don't have a choice. We are going to leave one. The question is, what does it look like? That's the question. Now, it turns out that you can alliterate, that is, play with the L words in this case, to get, I think, a better definition of leaving it. Instead of thinking about leaving it, why not let's think about living it every day? Every day. Why not let's think about that? What about this one? Thank you, Chris. Leveraging it, meaning you share it with your clients, with your team members and all that kind of stuff. And why would you be doing that? For an entire generation yet to come. Or to put that in even simpler terms, for your children and for your children's children. That's why everything that we talked about today is so, so, so important. And if you think about it, what a journey that would be, right? We could really kind of high five ourselves at the end of every day. So just imagine that. Just imagine it. Peter, I wonder if I could stop my share and ask you and Nathan just how you would see everything we spoke about today and why people should get in touch. I know it's a tough question. Why should people come and talk with you? I know it's a tough question. Go for it, Nathan. And again, thank you for making this possible today.
Thanks, Paul. Oh, look, if I could add, just firstly on B1G1 is, what it does for Collins Hume is it enables us to give and contribute on a much larger scale than we can on our own, and that's provided action against our values. And Paul, as you've pointed out throughout this presentation, it's integral to the organisation. It touches everything from our vision and values, our clients, our teams, service delivery, operations, financials. So it's important to get it right. B1G1's completely integrated into Collins Hume, and it happens effortlessly. And you've said there a moment ago that about the impacts, and you can go to our website and you can see that our impacts are happening seamlessly as we go about executing and delivering on our commercial strategy. And it genuinely provides, I'll just finish with this, that it genuinely provides Collins Hume with substance and outcomes to our values that have a whole raft of rich and deep benefits to the business.
Oh, that's great.
And I'd encourage people on the call, please, to reach out to discuss it further.
It's very nice of you encouraging them to reach out, but I tell you what, in order of get everything right, they all ought to be working with you. Peter, we've known each other for a number of years, and I continue to be inspired by the way you lead Collins Hume and all the great things you do. Anything else you'd like to add to this before we say farewell and thank you to the people who've joined us?
Not really, Paul. I mean, it's another great session by yourself, and I think Nathan hit it on the head with everything that we do, and I guess one thing that I will reiterate is that doing good is good for business. We're a result of that, and I guess the most important thing is for everybody that's here today is what you said before is how do we do it? You know, where we are today at Collins Hume, we've made some good choices and bad choices in how we've done it, and we've learnt from our mistakes. And I guess you know, we now know how to do it. So if anyone wants to quiz us and needs some assistance in being a business for good, and making a bigger impact, then we're more than happy to help them out with that journey.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. So thank you, Peter and Nathan, and indeed all the Collins Hume team who were here today. And importantly, those of you who are still on the call, so many of you are still on the call. Thank you, Shane. Thank you so much for being here. We will send you in the email that thanks you, we'll send you a little video which you may want to watch. I was going to show you now, but if I showed you now, I'd be way over time. So I'll send you a little video that you can watch. And in the meantime, I look forward to, and the team do as well, chatting to you as we move forward on this. Thank you so much for being here. Make it another great day and wherever you are. And I look forward to connecting with you. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye.